We're going to talk a little defending the Buck series in the 425. So I know Buck series is kind of, I don't know if I'd say making a comeback or just seems bigger than it has in the past, but it's everywhere. A lot of people are running it. We're tying it with a little pin and pull, and then people are calling stuff pin and pull. That's actually Buck sweep. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of like a power play with an extra dude pulling, right? So um, the base play. Of course, there's some other series. If you want to really hear all about the Buck series, I recommend you go back to this season, episode 12. So season 14, episode 12. That's where Joe and I broke down how to stop the Buck series with 3-4 defense. And when we went in depth about the Buck series, we're not going to do that tonight because we already have that recorded, and you can go jump on that. So we're going to start tonight with what are the strengths of the 425 versus the Buck series plays.
Sorry, muted.
It happens.
The strengths of the 425 in the Buck series, I think part of one of the things is, which can be a strength and at times it can be considered a weakness, having that six tech. If you use the six tech especially, but even the 6i, having that C gap kind of closed off, making it a little bit more difficult with a good defensive end, having the really forcing you to single block, granted down blocks, but single block really the 3 tech with a down block from the tackle. So you're going to have to single block him. Then you are going to probably at least need to chip the wing on the 6 tech, if not, combo or something double on the 6 tech, depending on how good your tight end and your wing back are. So not a ton of teams we don't see a lot of great tight ends these days. It's not that we never see them, but we don't see those big hulking good blocking tight ends that you probably think about as a tight end. We don't see the 200 and something pound kid. A lot of times it's a skinny tall kid, or sometimes it's just a kid. It's like the 4th receiver, something like that.
Right.
If he can't base block our 6 tech, then we're going to cause you to do some things with that wing to get the wing involved, and that should free up a little bit for us. To whereas, and I love the 4-3. And I'll just go ahead and say my favorite front for the wing T is the 4-3 under front. That said, I get guys who are like, "We're going to run 4-3 under front for the wing T this week." It's like, no. You're not a 4-3, so no, you're not. Because you don't have anybody in position to force. And like the most important thing you have to have is your umbrella intact. Who's in position to force? Who's in position? All of those things. It's like my biggest concern every time I say something like that is people going, "All right, great, we're going to." No.
So you shouldn't just go from the 425 to a 4-3 mid-season against one offense. It's not what you should do.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
Correct. And it's like you're not in. You would have to be a pattern match quarters team essentially, or a cover 2 team could theoretically do it. But some sort of too high, and like if you're not, then that's not you're not going to have anybody in position to force, and so right away you have a problem. You essentially have to be a 7-man front team to run an under front, meaning 4-2-5, theoretically 3-4 can do it. Excuse me, 4-3 or 3-4, theoretically 3-4 can do it. Not the way that we play the 3-4. You really need to be a 2 gap. Now, you can pretty easily become a 2 gap in the 3-4 if you're comfortable with that. But it's just different. But as long as you have the safeties that can force, then you can do it. But I like, from the standpoint of our offense, or our defense, I like the fact that we have the 6 tech there. the 3 tech there. So against the buck sweep, they're going to be in position to give you some problems. I like the fact, another strength is that if he pulls, follow, if he doesn't fill. Now, granted, it's going to apply to any front, but with the 4-2-5, we're lined up in 30 techniques, basically directly over top or outside shade of your guard. So when they pull, we are taking off. And that instant fast flow on the pull. Now, I say that when we pull outside, we're going to check and then go, because we used to get a lot of reads from the quarterback that would pull outside and then run up the middle when where the linebackers vacate. You'll also get that sometimes with RPOs. Now you can still RPO our backside, which we can talk about later. You can RPO our backside will linebacker, but so the will linebacker, the backside linebacker, is taking off and looking for first open door past the center. So we're causing a fair number of issues for you, I think, with that. The center has got a block back on the nose. He should have that block back. It shouldn't be difficult for him. On our 1-tech nose. The guards are pulling. The play side, the backside guard, I'm assuming, has to do some sort of a backside tackle, whether he's like a hinge or some sort of a fire, rip and run, whatever, something to not allow anybody inside of him. I don't think you would just straight block out on our weak side end, but and the speed we play with the weak side end could be an advantage too. Most wing tees, it's going to hit fast enough that he's not running it down. But if we do a good job of setting up the edge front side, he can get there. But the will linebacker should beat all that. He's taking off. He's flying. And the way that we play our weak side end, if he plays in that good heavy technique, the tackle shouldn't get any sort of clean release up to second level. So my will linebacker is now looking for a run through, which is probably going to happen between the 3-tech and the center, and taking that run through. It's probably going to hit the buck, which is not an advantage. The which is the trap element of it. The kind of not necessarily counterplay, but the other play in the series. He is going to hit the buck area when he sees that pull. And that's good, because much as I would love him to go cross and run over and be in on the buck sweep, I don't want to give up the buck trap for anything. So, that's what takes him there. I like that. And if he recognizes it, he can continue to scrape and get involved later. So you're down blocking the 3 technique. We've talked about the problems with the front side end. The Mike backer is check and go, because we're causing some problems for the wing. He's going to get a cleaner release to scrape and extend the edge. I would expect the wing to come off to try to pick off our Mike backer, to try to chip and come off to our Mike backer. But I think that he's going to have a good chance of getting over top with the issue with the 6-tech, that one of those two is going to be able to get in there. I like the fact that you are going to have to kick out our outside backer, who's going to set the edge. He's going to read ball down, stays down. He's going to come up and he's going to set the edge. With the 6 technique doing a nice job of not getting collapsed down, we should have a pretty decent sized alley. If the Mike backer can scrape, then he's going to get in that alley. And then the most important thing of all, our free safety in the base 4-2 against a good wing tee probably isn't deeper than 9 yards and maybe only 8 yards. And he is flying down. And that is where we feel like you're out of numbers. You cannot account for, theoretically, I don't know if you can account for the free. Now, if you keep those two and you wrap, I guess you would wrap to the Mike linebacker. If you keep that double on the defensive end and wrap to the Mike linebacker then the free safety's free. So, and look, I'm not a wing tee. Like I draw this stuff in my head. I've seen it a billion times. So, and I get wing tee guys who are like, that's not the rules. I'm like, you listen here. You get in a room with 15 of your other wing tee buddies and y'all draw the rules. I've seen y'all.
Nobody knows the rules. There's no rules.
There are rules, but I mean, like,
put your shirt on.
It's like that's not the rules that Tubby Raymond drew up. Okay, fair. That's not the rules that Denny Crean drew up. Fine. That's not the rules that this guy or this guy or this guy drew up. That's not how Kenny Simpson runs his buck, buck sweep. Fine. Agree. Y'all don't have there's not a set of rules. Just
And
like power. I can tell you that the rule on power is for the center to block back. The center will never combo the nose. I guarantee you, most teams will combo the center on the nose. It's wrong in my rules, and I will never do it. But I think most people do. They're not as good as I am. That's fine.
if I've learned anything about coaches in my 4 short years, it's that they will do anything but the rules that some guy will sell them. So it's great that those 3 or 4 guys have amazing rules that we're not listening to, but y'all aren't running them anyway, so it doesn't matter. That's
People will go and it is amazing. People will go and find like a film of Delaware from 1963 and try to reverse engineer the wing T before they will listen to somebody who coached under Tubby Raymond for 15 years and published the rules.
yeah. Yeah. I think that exactly what you talked about, that 3-tech. So that's where I think we get our first advantage. And it's because, and having worked with Kenny now for a while, my computer made loud noise, I'm sorry. Understanding his keys, his rules, and I understand they're not all the same. We just discussed that. But if you bring pressure on that front side guard and he's allowing flybys as he pulls, he's going to immediately make a stay call. So what I think the 4-2-5 does is allow us to turn buck into power, old school power, not an H inserting. And no, we're going to make a wing dig out or a tight end, dig out our 6-tech, which is going to be hard enough to do.
And that shouldn't happen. Yeah.
And so now you've got no answer. You're going to down block all of that. Your front side guard's got to make a stay call. And now I've got a strong side outside linebacker or a strong safety, whatever you're calling it in your system there, that's coming to fit right now. And he's the only thing your guard can aim at. So I got a wrong arm out of him, and I've extended that shelf. You can't fall off the shelf quickly. So what are you going to do? You're going to bounce it wide, and now all my players get to come make the play. So I think that's one of the biggest advantages to just having a 3-tech. And now that, obviously you could do that the 4-3. You could do that with anything where you can put a 3-tech out there. I guess, well, in a 3-4, you probably don't want to condense that much because then you're just making yourself a 4-front anyway. So, but I think that's one of the biggest things. You start asking how to fix that 3-tech blowing up your guard. And that's what you've got to do. You got to leave him home. So we've just made you play old school block down, kick out, counter, and you don't have an insert guy, which everyone loves to run now. Everyone likes counter with my H back to the front side and calling it power. So
yeah, everybody used to the old school wing T. There was no stay call. There were, some of them would stay on buck trap.
Yeah.
But even a lot of them would pull on buck trap. They would pull both guys. And because the 3-tech would step out with the puller, and then that's how they would handle it. That's how they would control it. And maybe the reason that's harder to do, I coached in a system where we tried to do that 1 year, and we were out of the buck stuff in one scrimmage, and it was exactly because of that. We could not handle the penetration with 2 guards pulling. We didn't know what we were doing, and we just couldn't handle it. But maybe it's because we've tried to do so much other stuff, to whereas the old school wing T, buck sweep, buck trap, some sort of counter crisscross, something, maybe belly series, like a belly ISO type stuff, belly cross block, waggle. That was the package. And so we need stay calls because we were going to be able to control you. If he was blowing us up, we were going to trap him. And we're not, and the same is true in our system as well, in our pistol power offense system. we didn't used to need to do all the adjustments because we would just run power. And if he followed the H back, the early years of us running this system, we didn't throw the ball very well. And we in pistol power offense system, I mean, and everybody focused in on our H back. And when the H back went in motion, we ran power, we ran power, we ran power, we ran power. And then you'd start to blitz to the H back, and we'd run counter. And that worked. And I don't know. The frustrating thing with that is when they can stop both of them. But that's where you got to figure out what to do next. And but yeah, I also wonder, I wonder what coaches were like back in the day. This is just me drifting off. I feel like coaches, and I think maybe a big part of it is our fault. Our meaning me, now you, and other people who have made the information so readily available. To whereas if you were taught by a wing T guy to be a wing T coach in the 1980s, you were going to be a wing T coach because you didn't have access to anything else.
Right. You coach what you know, literally, because that's all you know.
You couldn't even rewind what you saw on Saturday and try to reverse engineer it, right? You could watch football on TV, but really hard to sit there and see a play you liked and run it back and draw it up and all that sort of stuff. The play happened and it was off into the ether, never seen again until YouTube in 2005. So maybe that's why coaches were stuck with an offense. And I don't know if it's better or worse, but we get shiny object now and we've got to install this new thing and new idea and try something else. And very, very few coaches just commit to a system. Even the double wing team that we see now, they've got 5 different alignments and and look, they're not the same team that they were, but I remember even 6 or 7 years ago, they were just lining up and kicking the snot out of you with 5 plays.
Yep.
And it's, I'm sure that an element of that is they don't have the kids that they had 6 or 7 years ago. And so they're like, we got to try to do something else. But it's interesting. Not that I don't think Kenny's wrong because I'm doing the same thing, but I just think it's interesting how things have that a stay call didn't used to be a thing right now.
Well, when you also think about didn't used to be a thing, there didn't used to be D linemen reading stuff, I don't feel like.
Sure.
Right? I mean, everything was break through and go tackle the quarterback. Go hit the mesh point. That's what D linemen did. And that's what we still see coaches today that are like, no, this is supposed to be attacking. Our D linemen have to hit the gap and go. They don't understand that we've evolved D linemen to you're kind of like a linebacker in a 3-point stance, man. You get to hit your guy, pressure reads, visual reads, right? And we're doing different stuff nowadays. So
yeah, I'm always amazed by guys who just slam their defensive ends up the field at any front. And I'm like,
yeah. And so, back in the day, Buck, sure, a 3-tech came through, but then he's getting picked up by the second dude and kicked out and probably blocking the outside linebacker too.
Yeah.
Because
again,
I'm going
trap him,
right. Yeah. And then here we go. We're off to the races. And nowadays, we've the wrong arm thing is taken on and whatever other version of the train wreck or whatever you want to call it. And we're eliminating your pulling guys. So you do have to think of something else. If we get 8 inches into your offensive line, we've ruined your play. So, yeah, I mean, Kenny's stay call or whoever invented that, I'm sure he just took it from someone, but because that's what we do as coaches.
Yep.
But someone along the way went, hey, what if this guy runs with the puller? Or what if he goes opposite of the puller? Because we know we're getting 2, and let's just change the game back here. So
which is funny because the old wing T thing was to put a player in conflict. And even when I first started coaching, even 15 years ago when I started studying the wing T, and by that time I was a defensive coordinator by then or about to be, and I had some understanding of football. I'd been to clinics and I'd studied and I was 5 years in or something like that. I wasn't, I thought I knew a lot more than I did for sure. But the philosophy of put a player in conflict made total sense to me. All right, we're going to put take the 3 tech. We're going to put him in conflict because if he, if he follows the guard out there or comes up the field, he's going to make the play on buck sweep, but we're going to kill him on buck trap. But if he squeezes down inside to take away buck trap, he's useless against buck sweep.
Right.
Right. And so we're going to put him in conflict, and we're going to mess with his head so much that he's just going to. The strong safety was always the one that was talked about. It was like if the strong safety comes up and attacks, then we're going to run the key pass or waggle or whatever and throw behind him. We're going to use play action, throw behind him. And if he stays back, then he can't. We're going to kick him out. We're going to run inside of him, and he's always going to be wrong. And that totally made sense to me at the time. And now I look at things and it's like, yeah, but we have a read. And so you may be making our read harder. And there are elements of still putting a player in contract for conflict. For example, if you run buck sweep and pull both guards and the front side linebacker follows the front side guard, and then you run buck trap and pull both guards. And if you can successfully do that and kick the 3 and block back on the 1, problem is who gets to, you've got to get somebody inside to the will. And that's a whole different issue at the end. But you expect the mic to get pulled out, and then you can bring the tackle maybe down to the will. Maybe that puts the mic in conflict, but it creates a whole nother set of issues if you've got to get the tackle all the way down inside of the will. And the will is screaming on the guard pull. So it's probably not going to be there. It's going to be very difficult. So it's like, if we do what we're supposed to do, most of what you're doing doesn't put us in conflict in that old school system. And that evolved to, okay, now you put us in conflict with, for example, zone read option. And not talking wing T, now talking zone read. And then it was like, all right, now the defensive end is in conflict because if he comes down to tackle the dive, the quarterback pulls and goes around. And if he squats, then we run inside. And then it became, well, if he crashes down, he's closed off B gap and the will scrapes and naturally gap exchanges and nobody's in a conflict. So we eliminated the conflict. Now, is that hard to do? Yes, you've got to work it. It should be natural, but it is not, and you have to work on it. But in theory, there's no way that the defensive end crashing down the line of scrimmage unblocked should ever not tackle the quote-unquote dive, the zone run. And so if the will loops, he's on the quarterback, and it's a one-on-one deal, in theory. So, again, we're not in conflict. Then it became RPOs. And RPOs, the biggest issue with RPOs to me today is that the rules are not enforced. There are major issues with being put in conflict in certain areas of the RPOs, and it's because the rules aren't enforced, quite frankly, which is lineman downfield.
Yeah, I mean, that really segue right into what are the weaknesses of the 4-2-5 versus this Buck series. And I think that's kind of where we get is you got to go to this RPO thing. So, Kenny has made running a slant behind your inside linebackers and watching your backside linebacker. Once again, I give Kenny credit. I'm sure someone else was doing it before him. This is football. We've all done these things, but he's the guy that I know that taught me to do that. And I can see it fitting in every offense now. It's so easy. Run a bubble, run that, run, the old glance route, like a deep, on and on and on. You can run routes and throw them after you've faked a handoff. And it's what you're saying, Joe, is that the O-line is already on inside zone, headed to a Mike backer, selling the run, and now he makes contact at 3.5 yards and pushes him to 5, and we just threw a ball out to a slant. But, with 4-2-5, especially on the weak side, unless you're playing cover 1, which eliminates RPOs pretty much anyways, or some cover
about
3.
Cover 1 now. 0 eliminates RPOs.
Okay, 0. Yeah. You've got a pretty big void over there, and we know that, right? The flats on the weak side is our open spot in 425. That's where we're weak, and that's why we call off coverages, because we're not going to let you find it. But if they're going to run buck 50 plays a night, and they're going to have RPOs with it, they're going to run that RPO 50 times a night as well, generally. You know what I mean? Like it's not, it's both. And so now we have that void. So I think that's a weakness is who stays home to that one or two backside that's going to run a slant inside of our corner or inside of back behind our backers. So I think that is one of the weaknesses. Having spent some time now in the 3-4, number one, I miss my fourth defensive lineman. I absolutely miss him. Like, where are you? But also, I just have this random extra linebacker running around on the field. Like, oh, hi, I'm glad I get to use you for some stuff too, right? So it does the 4-2-5 that weak side weaknesses, and that's why it's there, because you don't have an additional safety to just roll down and cover everything high as well. And so the RPO game does open up for you.
So one of the things about RPOs is in order to make the RPOs work, you kind of have to change some formations. Otherwise, we can take the RPOs away. For example, you're not going to run the little slant or mini curl in behind my will backer or over top of the tackle area with a traditional split receiver, traditional wing T 100, 900 formation where the X receiver, the outside receiver, he's not going to be the guy that does that. So you've got to get somebody over there to do that. Okay, who's going to do that? All right, well, we're going to run twins to that side, and we're going to run the tight end and the wing to the other side to run our traditional perfectly fine. I don't need a corner out there anymore.
Right.
So now I go and I play man coverage on your two guys. They don't have run force, and I got a weak safety sitting out there. Or I have a weak safety sitting inside and a corner sitting outside. Or I move my weak safety inside and I say throw the bubble and we'll deal with the bubble, or all sorts of things formationally. And then the other things I see guys do is not use a tight end or not use a wing, and that's not advantageous at all. I think one of the big advantages in buck is running to a tight end wing surface. You don't have to, but that's certainly, that edge is a little bit better surface to run to, where you can combo the 6 and all of those good times. You can certainly run to just a tight end and kick out the 6 technique, but now the strong safety is going to fold in, and it's a chess match.
Yeah.
The weakness in the 4-2-5, in my 4-2-5, the weakness is probably the same as the strength, the commitment to some of the reads, like you said, and we're going to overplay some reads. And so when you get into things like RPOs, there are times that we get pulled out of the window because of whatever call that we have is just, aggressive, or we're aggressively reading. And I'm okay with that. We play. I think one of the things that we do different than a lot of other teams is that more coaches need to do. So for example, let's say that you play a tight end wing to one side. What I call it, tight wing twins. You've got a tight end wing to one side and you've got twins to the other side. What a lot of teams will do if they're not playing man is they will either apex that overhang safety. So let's call him the weak safety, who will either apex, which is halfway between midpoint between the end man line of scrimmage and the number 2 receiver, or he plays essentially head up. First of all, if you apex, now you really, really open up the bubble, right? There's a lot of space out there. If he's basically, let's say that you have a 6-yard split, what would it be, 6 yards, 7 yards, something like that? I'm at 3-yard split because I'm apexing. He runs a bubble. There's a lot of space, and there's nothing but a corner out there. Now that corner's in man, they just run him off. You don't have a chance. At least if he's off, maybe he can attack to the outside. And another major issue is that corners don't attack to the outside. They sit there and
Ever.
block. Go to the outside.
They never do.
Stop going inside. You have no business in there. There's nothing for you there. We have 10 other kids that know how to play football and not just cover. Okay, cornerbacks, some corners, not all. Some corners are basically glorified kickers, right? They can cover like crazy, but God forbid they have to get in and make a football play.
Right.
But for some reason they decide to jump inside every time I see this. By alignment, with the apex alignment, you've taken away the mini curl because he can't get inside of you in theory, but you've opened up something else, which is the bubble. We will play, and then by alignment head up, you've basically said, I don't care which way you go, but I'm going to let you go. Head up is the worst alignment for your corners, your safeties, and coverage is head up. One of the things that we really, really emphasize is never, ever play head up and never play in a shade either, because that's essentially head up. The further off you get, think about if you're 7 yards off and you're inside shade. What the frick is the difference? If I'm pressed and inside shade, that matters. My nose is on your inside armpit. That matters. I'm taking away your inside release. If I'm 7 yards off and my nose is on your armpit, what's the difference? Time and space. Understand the distance. I don't know if this is Pythagoras or what, but it doesn't work. You're giving up a two-way go. You're allowing him to either run, from a corner perspective, he can either run a post, he can run an out, he can run a fade, he can run a slant, he can run everything in the world because you've given them all up because you're head up and you're going to be wrong no matter what. Never play head up. Or even close to head up. So we corners play two, let's say it's cover 3 corner. He plays 2 full yards inside of number 1. It's never been a problem. It's a solution because he can now pre-program his brain to say, you can't run a post on me. I'm already here.
Right.
You can't run a slant on me any more than you could before because I'm 7 yards off and that's an underneath route, but also I'm 2 yards inside. So I'm going to have a much better chance to drive on the slant if they throw that quick game. I'm in better position. Slant is not a corner route to defend, right? It's too shallow for a 7-yard off corner. It's press corner's route, but it's going to come into an inside guy who shouldn't be, storming the flat route. You can only throw on me. Can't run a curl because you're curling into the inside, right? Curl breaks to the inside, and I'm standing here. You can run a hitch, and if you don't break it 5 yards, then I'm playing fade. I only have to worry about 2 things. And by the third step, I know whether I'm playing hitch or fade because you haven't thrown a hitch, so I'm playing fade. Now he can run a comeback, sure. He can run a deep out, maybe. But I'll also tell you that we're the only team that I've ever seen successfully run deep out repeatedly. But also, what's the alignment? We've got to pay attention to that. If he goes to the tight alignment that we use to run a deep out, we don't play 2 yards inside.
Right.
Because now you can't run a post. There's nowhere to go.
Right.
You're already there. You don't line up with an 8-yard split to run a post route. You can run a crossing route, but you can't run a post. So that said, by alignment, if I want to take away the bubble because you're a good RPO bubble team, I will play a yard outside with my cover 3 strong or weak safety under number 2 receiver, a full yard outside, not 2 yards because we're only 5 yards off, not 7. Again, the tighter you get, the less it has to be, but he needs to be a full yard outside. And I've heard one of our secondary coaches calls it a full man outside, meaning that he's the width of another guy. And that makes sense too, if that works for you. But I'm taking away the bubble now. And what I've done is I've pre-programmed my brain. You can't throw a bubble. So if I see ball up, I'm not running to the flat. I'm playing on that and trying to break that up because that's what I expect. If I see quick ball up, I ain't worried about it. What am I worried about? You can't run an out route. I'm already here. You can't run a flat route. I'm already here. So I see ball up and, I look at where you're pointed, but if it's to the flat, I just stand there and I'll take it. Thank you. Now there's more to it than that, but I've simplified it by getting myself an extra step or two closer to where it needs to be. And I've simplified it by pre-programming my brain to know if I see your shoulder pointing inside, I'm driving on that mini curl because that's the only thing left. That's all that's left. And if you're going to throw the mini curl on me, I'm going to line myself up a full yard inside to take that away. And then I know that if I see your shoulder to the flat, I've got to run to the outside hip on the bubble, which I'll take all day. But also I'm not Apex. The Apex, I could have the same thought process with Apex, but I'm dead to rights on the bubble. I can't get there.
I'm a big supporter of letting you throw the ball 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage to start every play, and especially when I generally have +1 defenders to whatever you're throwing. So you have 2 receivers, I've got 3 defenders. Now it's 1 blocker for 3 defenders. I also struggle with getting corners to go outside. So yes, we give up some yards from time to time.
Corners have got to understand that a well-coached bubble team.
Yeah. And that's hard to do.
The goal of the bubble is not a pass. The bubble is a long handoff. Yep. When you throw the bubble, good bubble teams tell that kid, you sprint outside to a spot 4 yards deep on the sideline. Once you get there, do whatever. But this is a run play. It needs to get 4 yards.
Yep.
And don't come back inside because we're not blocking any of those guys.
At all.
Because on that side, we're faking a run play or something.
Yeah.
We're not helping you there. Go out there and then you can try to beat the corner. And that's fine. Have fun.
They don't want to tackle you anyway. They'll literally run into the block on purpose so that they can have an excuse to not tackle you. So
take your chances. Yeah, he's over there holding his hands up, screaming he's being held. The referee's throwing the flag because they don't know.
The new hot thing is these, and it's not a new hot thing. It's been around since triple option, but the run option. So, with the 4-2-5, another weakness we have is, okay, so our defensive end is in a 5. And the next dude is a 1, right? Weak, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Weak defensive end is in a 5, and the next dude is a 1. So number one, there's already this bubble. And we all know about the bubble and B gap. Like, it's there, it exists. And so, if you start reading either of those guys and waiting for them to overcommit to this now pulling guard, such as, say, you got a 1 tech. We know the 1 is going to attack the nose, fill the pull, follow the pull. We know the Will backer is going to read, pull, and go and fill. And all of a sudden, we have kind of opened up a void. Not only is the B-gap bubble still there, but there's not a linebacker there. And the next safety is Allie, who might be screaming downfield to the strong side. So realistically, if we can get the RPO game running with our second receiver backside, there's no one left. So you read the 3 tech, and now all of a sudden it is just green pastures to the end zone. So I think that's the next weakness with that B gap being empty. And I know there's answers to that, but that obviously a glaring hole in the 4-2-5 is those easy reads sometimes lead to what you stated originally was the overplaying of those reads.
Yeah. And the big thing that we have to do with that one is that, like, if we're using our weak safety there, he is at that 5x5 or 5x1 position or wherever he's at. He is in a position to fold in. It's not going to be a glorious thing. It's going to be a 4 or 5 yard gain, but it's not, open pastures because he's not driving on a bubble. You're like, well, I'll run a bubble and pull him out of there. And it's like, he's not going. He's standing there. You've seen our good safeties. You can do all of that. He's standing there staring at your quarterback. Not flipping all over the place. So that's one answer. But yeah, I mean, always with, the ability to do the pulls and the reads, but there's a lot that can go wrong. So what I would say is until we get to a high level of competition, like, I think Kenny does a great job. If I thought Kenny sucked, then when you told me that you were going to go do a podcast with Kenny, it would have been great. Pick one. Like, I mean, quite honestly, there's a lot of people that I probably would have been like, great, pick one. Like, we're not doing this. But, Kenny's been on the show a lot. I think Kenny's great. I think I'm great too. I see a lot of people running our stuff and not doing it well, and I see a lot of people running Kenny's stuff and not doing it well.
Yeah.
You got to find, and that's not on us, right? That's not because what we're doing is wrong. It's proven. It's a team has got to have the ability to commit to it, coach it across the board, player buy-in, all of these. There's a lot. So it's only going to be your higher level teams that are going to hammer you on all this stuff. And that's when you've got to go to the next level of coaching, which is exactly what you said. We have answers. We've got to start to figure out how to use those answers, how to change up the looks, how to disguise coverage, how to, and you're not going to beat the great team that does all of that. So let's say it's Kenny. You're coaching against Kenny and his staff, and they've got it humming. You're not going to beat them unless you're sheerly more talented by running 4-2 cover 3 every snap.
Right.
Now, you may go 8-2 in the regular season, and you may get to the second, even the third round of the playoffs on that. I have multiple teams who have done it, doing exactly that, 4-2 cover 3. But at some point, you're going to have to be able to now move. When you play a team that can do all that, you have to be able to do all that, which is to disguise, give looks, make it difficult. No different than in the triple option when we used to say you've got to have 3 ways to defend the triple option. One of which is, change the quarterback reads. So let's say you're playing a zone read option team. You've got to change the quarterback reads. So you might have a weak side America's Fire Zone blitz where you're crashing everybody off the edge. You're just giving an immediate read. You may have one where the defensive end squeezes and one where the defensive end squats. And so one, you have the natural gap exchange, and one, the will backer's going to fire B gap. If you don't do it those 3 ways against a decent zone read team, if you just let the kids sit back there and read it every time, they're going to destroy you. We've done things where we've added in little checks and changes where, the linebacker sees the guard pull. I've seen this. And again, you have to look at it. So like, we had a team running, wasn't buck, but they would pull the guard, GT. So they were reading off the backside of a GT counter, right? Pulling guard and tackle. And we would tag it because they would read off the backside, and then they would either pull it and run or throw the RPO behind the backer. And so we would literally just tag it sometimes and tell the will backer not to go. If you get a pull, don't go. Is that good? No. As far as like, if everything, all things equal. No, it's not a good strategy. We're outnumbered on the GT side, but on the actual counter side. But in terms of just giving a different look, that was what we came up with. And, it's a different look. But you have to have we used it when we knew the kid, based on film study, we felt like the kid would guess or that it was being called. And so we would use it.
No, it's good. They can't all read it. And
yeah, I mean,
and sometimes
and again,
you got
to make your decisions on how to use that. Like, I wouldn't use that wouldn't be my first answer, but I'm just saying that's a thing we could do because we could see like there were situations where I ain't worried about the GT.
There's
right?
kids that can't read it, and the coach isn't calling it. And I mean, I've been a part of that, and just listen to the coach on the sideline screaming, "Oh my God, I hope he pulls it," right? And then he hands it off into a massacre, or the opposite.
Yeah.
Man, he better hand it off here, and he pulls it and runs into 3 or 4 dudes coming around the weekend. So there you have that situation too, where it's not a read, you think it is, and no one's calling it. We're pretending it exists. The kid can't read it. The coach thinks he can, and life is good for the defense that play. So
yeah, and then we also just had we have one of our teams that runs our offense, but with a lot of our RPO tags on it. So they pistol power offense, but with RPOs on everything, as some teams do. And I don't love it, but I can tell you this: if I had that quarterback, I'd probably love it.
Yeah,
because he reads it right every single time.
Yeah.
And it's one of those like you go to your strengths. I had a quarterback who could throw the fade and the deep out and all that sort of stuff. way better than this kid can, right? I didn't RPO. I don't need him to read it. He can. I don't need that advantage. I can just call the pass and he can get it to the kids. But if you have the kid that can do that, do the RPO element, and maybe he's not as strong in the drop back pass category. It's like you've got to look at your kids. Defensively, I think we go the wrong direction. You know, going back to the 4-2-5, I think we go the wrong direction. I think we look at our kids and we go, oh, he's not as good, so I'm going to blitz him a million times. And the problem with that is, number one, they never really learned to play the base defense. And number two, we're just blitzing to blitz sometimes, and we're blitzing him out of position. And so maybe he hits him in the backfield once or twice, but we end up giving big plays. And I think for our purposes, defensively, if we are good at our base, then we can start to add other elements. Don't have to be great, but our kids have to be confident in their key reads and that kind of thing. But if we're not, we need to focus on just playing base defense and being really good at that. Whereas like offensively, RPOs can fix a weaker run game, and pass can certainly fix a weaker run game. But defensively, blitzing can't fix a poor base defense unless you know how to blitz them, unless you can figure out how to blitz them at the right place at the right time. Now, blitzing, if I can load you up at the point of attack because I know exactly what you're going to do, like, yeah, I can solve all the world's problems with blitzing. Because I'm
If
just
only we
putting four
knew.
guys at the point of attack. But you
If
better
only
know
we
that.
knew.
And that's why we talk about tendencies. Tendencies need to be 70% of the time. And then it's kind of like investing, like timing the market. Like, so what happens is we get a tendency and we say, all right, on second and long, 70% of the time, they are running, let's just say, second and long, 70% of the time, they're running strong side power. That'd be a really weird second and long call, but let's just make it simple. They're running strong side power.
Strong side power read.
Sure. Any of them. And so I love this blitz against strong side power read on second and long. And then in the game, instead of calling that blitz on every second and long, which is like 4 of them in a game, maybe, instead of calling that blitz every single one, you call it on like 2 out of the 4. Because you're trying to, essentially time the market. You're trying to be like, this is the one where the 70% is coming up. Now, buddy, if it's 70%, you need to do it every single time and just hope you're in the right place on 3 out of the 4.
Yep. Well, our third part is how do we make adjustments to our weaknesses, but we've kind of covered each of those as we came across them. So
we just rambled about this thing for the whole time and we've covered everything.
We did a really good job. I
think we did.
Strengths, weaknesses, and then every weakness got a way to fix it. So that's perfect. If I were making a podcast, is exactly I think what I would do. So maybe
I think the biggest thing, quite honestly, the biggest thing is, and I know we talked about with the defensive line and the linebackers and the over aggressiveness of our key reads. We're non-negotiable on those key reads, squeezing down blocks. We're non-negotiable on it. We're non-negotiable on following pullers. Pulls follow if it doesn't fill. We're non-negotiable on that. So we are maybe over aggressive on those, and you can take advantage of some of those. The other end of that is on the back end where we are not over aggressive on anything. And that is going to clean up a lot of those things. The free safety must fill the alley. The strong safety and weak safety must key read, ball up, ball down, and be patient. Don't go till you know, go when you know. If you do those things, don't go till you know takes away a lot of RPOs, because how do you read a guy who didn't move?
Yeah.
What do you read him as? You read him as,
you got to read him stay and hand it off. Like that's what you got to, right?
So now it's not an RPO. Has been proven by every announcer on TV in the last 5 years. If it's handed off, it was not an RPO.
That's right. This was a run.
There's a fake handoff and a throw. It was clearly an RPO and not a play action.
Yes.
And we all joke about that because we know the complexities of playbooks, but they just love that word. But yeah, if my guy is patient, you read him as not going anywhere. But if he's a don't go till you know guy, then once you do it, he's a million miles an hour to wherever you're going.
Yep.
And so, it's the same thing as it. That's essentially the RPO version of feathering the end, right? We used to try to feather the defensive end, have him squat and play both of them, and make it difficult for the quarterback to know what he's going to do. That's a really hard thing for a high school kid to do. Like, you could do it with Jadeveon Clowney when he was in high school, but you can't do it with most kids. And I think what they would do with him is just have him go sprint and kill.
Probably.
And he just, like, there's no reads.
He was 3 can't block me and 4 can't move me was his motto, I think.
Yeah. And I've met his high school coach, so
I bet he taught him everything he knows.
no, absolutely not. In fact, I think he felt the opposite. Like, he couldn't teach him anything.
I didn't teach him a damn thing. Let him ride. All right, let's pay the bills and get out of here, man.
He felt the other way, but not because he couldn't have taught him, but how do you teach somebody who's being told he's the best football player of all time?
You don't.
It's very difficult.
It's hard to teach the ones that are being told they're the best at their position
right now. In this
in this
current huddle. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, I mean, that's that element of it, the patience on the back end. Everybody can't be flying. We've run into it against the when the safety that's over top of the Twins side saw the buck sweep and then was like, I'm gonna go be +1 on that buck sweep. What happens next? Counter. So we have to be patient on the back end if we're going to be very, very aggressive on the front end. There's give and take on everything. If you're aggressive all over the field, it doesn't work. If you're going to be ultra aggressive on the front, what coverage do you run? You run cover 0. Well, cover 0 is about as conservative as it gets. I'm going to lock on this guy and I'm going to run with him anywhere he goes. I'm going to go to the bathroom with him. Now, in a grand scheme of the play call, it's very aggressive to run cover 0 blitzes. But the actual job of the corner that's in man coverage in cover 0 is very conservative. I have this guy and I'm going nowhere ever. Right. There's no way you're going to throw to this guy because I'm going to the bathroom with him. I'm going in the stands with him. I'm going to be in his truck with him and his girlfriend after the game. It's going to be weird, but they're not going to throw to this kid.
It got really weird.
Yeah, it got super weird, but they didn't throw to him.
All right. I think we checked all the boxes, including the one where we hop in the truck with someone after the game. Very strange situation. Pay the bills to get out of here. Join.joedanielfootball.com. Go there right now. You get access for $1. It gives you 7 days to check out the systems. This is you checking out the system you're already running, which is probably the 5-2. So you're going to look at the 3-4 system and go, oh my goodness. There's other ways to do this. And then you're going to look at the 4-2-5 and go, this is much simpler. And you're going to look at the 4-3 and be like, man, I love these blitz angles. So you're going to jump into all those in 7 days. And then you're going to jump over to the offensive side and figure out how to use the zone count system. You're going to learn how Joe lets his quarterbacks never have their eyes in the direction they're going to throw, which, weirdly enough, still happens at all levels. I 100% can't understand it.
Oh, 100% our kids are.
They're doing it too. Yeah. So there you are.
Look,
so
we're working on it, but
going to give you a trigger system to tell your quarterback to look the opposite way. At least
I'm giving him something to look at rather than just saying, stare at that guy.
Yes. Chalkboard forums are open all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I have enjoyed jumping on there lately and just answering a few things with my weird versions of stuff I've learned along the way. Chalk Talks are now weekly because we're in season. So every Monday, most Monday nights, Joe's jumping on. And I have to coach games on I've really missed them. I'll be honest with you. I've really missed them. I head home. It's like 10:30 at night. And I'm like, dang, it's over. I think I caught one by accident. Chalk Talks are weekly. Come in, ask your questions, man. Ask about what you're facing that week. You can ask about a system thing, whatever it is. Game film analysis is the granddaddy of them all. Jump in the platinum package. Get your game film analysis. Literally every Saturday morning, you just take that film you're already going to share to another coach, and you just share it to Joe too. Okay, and then him or Con or whoever else is looking at it.
Bill.
Oh, man, what a trio of dudes to just watch your film. It's like, hey, let me ask all these championship coaches to come in and check out my film real fast and tell me what I'm doing wrong. That's exactly what they do. And if you stay there long enough, they get past the low hanging fruit and they start helping you fundamentally.